The world is now very different to when many of our leadership practices were developed. In today's episode of the Leadership Project, we address the question of whether we are being overmanaged and underled. I am joined by Graham Wilson, affectionately known as the Leadership Wizard. Graham discusses challenges that most businesses face around lack of collaboration and the need to break down silos, and how we can reset our leadership approach to get the right balance of direction, empowerment, and trust. There is something in this for all of us. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Graham Wilson. Graham is affectionately known as the Leadership Wizard, and he's also the founder of an organisation called Success Factory that has bespoke programs for leadership and also is based on his handbook for leadership called Leadership Laid Bare. And Graham's fundamental premise here is that our older styles of management do not suit a modern world and that we are overmanaged and underled. So we're going to unpack that a little bit today. Why is it that our former models are not working, and what do we need to do differently as we evolve into a new model of leadership? So without any further ado, Graham, I'd love it if you would say hello to the audience. And what I'd love to know is something from your background. What inspired you to be so passionate about challenging the modern day definition of leadership?
Thanks, Mick. I think it's a great question. I think what inspired me to do what I do. Well, I escaped school at 16, and I think if I go back to when I was educated, it was a very strange experience for me where you weren't allowed to collaborate. You know, collaboration was cheating. You had to work on your own, and you had to be brilliant at everything that you did and pass all the exams. So I thought I need to escape from this and have a look at the world in a different place. And I joined the military at 16. So I had a really good insight really into what, amazing leadership is all about, and the opportunity that brought me. And what inspired me to do what I do now really was the transition from the military to the corporate world, where I realized that a lot of the ideas and thoughts I learned in the military weren't being used in the corporate world. And in fact, it was overmanaged and underled. And I thought, that's not quite right. And I need to have a look at that and think about, is that the best way to get the best out of people? And clearly my thoughts were it wasn't. And I started really just thinking about what difference could I make in the world? And if I could awaken possibility in people to deliver extraordinary results, then that's got to be a great thing to do from a purpose point of view. So that's really where I started Success Factory. And the aim was really to challenge leaders and to start to think about the context they're actually in now, and think about, is what they've been educated for or how they've been managed in the past the right way based on the context changing so much. So that's what really inspired me. That was over 30 years ago now. And ever since then, we've been blessed to work with so many different amazing organizations around the world. And it's really great to have that dialogue and discussion. And I'm not here to tell people how to lead. I'm here to really get people to think about it and think about what's right in their world. So that difference that we can make and get people to realize the world is different than it was many years ago. And I think COVID has probably accelerated that, I guess. So that was really what inspired me to do what I do, really. And the fact that we can achieve so much more with a different style of leadership, which is around more humanistic approach, more connected, more trusting, more empowered, and more autonomy.
Yeah, really good, Graham. There's a couple of things there I want to unpack. First of all, congratulations on your success. Well done. There was two interesting things there, and I'm going to say both of them, and then we'll unpack one at a time. This transition from how we're educated to what works in the real world is very interesting. Mm. And then this aspect around what you learned about leadership in the military, which I think is quite often misunderstood by anyone that wasn't in the military.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one. You're dead right. Throughout our education system, we're taught that collaboration is cheating. When we get into the real world, we realize that collaboration is smart. And you don't even have to be the smartest person in the room to be the best leader. What do you think we need to do differently in the education system? Or do we have to change the education model to start introducing some kind of leadership, emotional intelligence, other skills during the formal education stage of our life?
I think, certainly if I go back to my school and, the teacher would ask a question and if we needed an answer, we'd all put a hand up and then, the teacher would tell us whether we were right or wrong. And obviously, if I had turned around and had a conversation with my classmates, I'd have been told off and, sent to the headmaster or headmistress and, told it was cheating. So the other aspect, of course, is that the teacher was always the person, with the font of all knowledge, had the answers. And, we even organise our own organisations often in that way, don't we? Where we have subject matter experts in different departments, heading up their particular areas. So I think education does have a big play in our mindset and our behavioural choice. But I think we do need to challenge it. I know, for example, in Finland, that have one of the best education systems in the world, they've stopped actually teaching subjects in isolation. They start to teach subjects across the board and see how they all interlink. And I think that's really interesting when you look at, say, academia, for example, and many of the MBAs that are taught out there. Some are changing, by the way, but some are new world thinking. But a lot of them are still in the old world where the strategy professor comes on board and says, week one, strategy is the most important thing in any business, and then next module is a marketing professor comes on board and says that's the most important thing, and then the finance professor comes on, and it's all done in isolation. So I think the more we can start to challenge the way that we're educated and start to see how it all links together. We talk a lot from a leadership point of view where leaders move certainly into a senior leadership role where they have to move away from what we call team two thinking, which is heading up their function, into what we call team one thinking. And team one thinking is making decisions on what's best for the organization. And I always say, I always look at a senior team and say, well, if I can walk into a senior team and not know what role they play, that's a great team, because having conversations based on what's best for the organization, not defending or fighting for their department. So I think, going back to your question around education, I think, we need to really get back to how teachers are how they're taught and how they are educated, and getting them to think about things in perhaps a different way. And maybe I know certainly I've seen in some of the primary schools in the UK where teachers are now actually getting groups together and giving the class a question to go and work on. And I think that's a far better way. And I guess that could be mirrored in leadership, couldn't it? Leaders are often around asking the right questions and then getting their teams to work out. So I think if we can start there, I think that would be a great way to introduce collaboration, break down some of the silos in terms of the subject matter, focusing on what individual children's strengths are as well, rather than what they can't do. I often talk about people chasing red dots. And in business, the KPI scorecards, and they ignore all the green stuff and focus on the one red one. And that really comes from school as well, in terms of our school report. And you've been great at everything apart from one subject, and we now need to have extra lessons on that one subject to bring us up to speed, rather than saying, actually, you're really good at maths, let's focus on maths. So I think those sort of changes would be incredible if we can do that. But the work I can do really is to challenge that within organisations and to start to get leaders to start to think differently and let go of the past. I often say on our programs is that half the challenge really is around getting people to unlearn what they've learned, so that we can then start to look at new ways of thinking.
Oh, there's so many things I want to unpack there, Graham, but I'll start with this. I feel that if you go into almost any organisation as either a leadership consultant, or it could be a business consultant, anything, and you go in, or you might be a new leader that's joined an existing team, and you have that sit down with the CEO, and you're asking the CEO, what changes would you like to see in this organisation? I'm going to put money down that one of the words that are about to come out of the CEO's mouth are, oh, I'd love to break down silos in this organisation.
Yeah.
It seems universal. And then what I'm hearing from you is really interesting and there's 3 C's that are coming to my mind. So collaboration, everyone talks about that. But then what I'm hearing from you is connection, that when we're able to connect the dots and see the interdependencies between the moving parts, once we understand that connection, then we can co-create. So
Absolutely.
it's having a collaborative mindset to make sure it's not a team two thinking, your term there. Get into a collaborative mindset, then map it all out so you understand the connections, and then you can co-create. How does that sit with you?
I think it's spot on, absolutely. And I think at the senior level, what we need to do is to create that big picture. What does that big picture look like? One of the challenges I always ask senior executives is to sit down for a moment and take a piece of paper and draw how their business works. And it's really fascinating when they do that, because they find it really hard to actually do that. The other aspect I do as well is to get them to map out on a whiteboard all the programs of change that they're trying to implement at the moment. And it's very interesting when you watch their behavior, because they all list them departmentally. And it's really fascinating how from a big picture point of view, we're trying to look at what's the connection across the business. And I think you can't do that unless there's clarity in their strategy. What's our purpose? What's our offer? What's our vision? What are our values? And that big picture thinking often is missing. So it's really difficult then to connect it. But we also then, we don't create the system that drives right behavior. I see, so many CEOs go, oh, I need to sort of improve collaboration. I want to break down these silos, and they'll still set individual objectives. They'll still reward people individually. They'll still have heads of in each department, and there's lots of things in the system that can be tweaked and can be changed to start to drive the right behavior and right action. So I don't really believe you can tell people how to behave. You have to create a system in which people can join and want to join and really connect to the purpose. But then, the system then drives the right behavior. So if I have, for example, individual and team objectives, or I'm rewarded individually and team-based, then it starts to shift my thinking and way of working. So there's lots of things we can do. And I think, we just need to sort of stop and I talk about, well, let me go back actually. So one of the things that inspired me was one of my hobbies is motor racing. And that came from my dad racing motorbikes and my uncle racing cars. And when I grew up, I used to help them out. And my mum wasn't keen on the motorbikes. It was far too dangerous. So I got more into cars. And when I used to listen to my dad and my uncle talk on a Sunday evening after they'd been racing at different circuits in the UK and Europe, they talked about the race. And what was really interesting was when you analysed the pattern that started to come out of their conversation, the pattern was this, is that every time they lost a race was because they were going too fast. And that really resonated with me at the time. It confused me. And again, an 8-year-old, it's all about, throttle full on, flat out, don't brake, don't need brakes. But actually, of course, to be that elite level, you need to know when to go fast, but you also need to know when to slow down. And it's normally when they hit a corner too quick or whatever, that's when they spun off and lost their position or whatever. So I learned from them really at a young age that you can speed it up by slowing down. And I think that is so relevant in today's world. I think quite often leaders are rushing around on what we call the hamster wheel, I guess, aren't they? And they're so reactive and so operational that once we get them to stop and think about things in their organization, you're thinking, well, why do we do that? It's that slowing down and taking a breath and reflecting. I think you mentioned before, and that's often the catalyst when people are like, actually, why do we have those sort of types of meetings? Or why do we set individual objectives? Or why are we still using annual appraisals? All those sort of things. If you were in an elite sports team, you wouldn't get to the end of the season, would you, and go, how did we do? It'd be constant performance reviewing and conversation. So there's lots of things that are happening in organizations, I think, that are habitual or have happened because they've happened and they've always happened. Once you stop and speed up by slowing down, you start to challenge some of these things that you realize actually that there's a lot of things in our gift that we can change.
Yeah, I love it, Graham. There's many things I'm picking up there. I do like this less haste, more speed concept to really slow down and pay attention to what's around us. If we're in firefighting mode every single day, we're never going to notice what's working and what's not working and what we need to do differently. That's very powerful. Then coming back to what you were saying before about the clarity of vision is when we're going to start having people realize that there is an alignment of objective and getting people growing in the same direction. And then I was picking up there this concept, and here's a challenge for everyone listening. Could you answer Graham's question that he asked before, where he sits down with the CEO and says, okay, map out what your business looks like, as in the flow of your business, how it's all connected. If you're a CEO listening to this show now, could you do that in your business? If you're a functional team leader, could you map it out for not just your internal team, but how your team connects into the rest of the machinery and how all of these systems and processes work? And then the other thing you brought up there is about the values. Are your systems and behaviors and processes congruent with the values that you got written on the office wall plaque, or are they actually polar opposite and they're driving a completely different behavior? Really interesting already, Graham. I want to ask a question then about what gets us stuck. So you spoke about this team 2, team 1 mindset. Why do so many functional leaders, sorry to say it, get stuck in team 2 thinking?
That's what they're good at. you think if you think about how we get promoted in organizations, in the old command and control hierarchical structure, where you're good at your job, you get promoted. You're good at your job, you get promoted. You're good at your job, you get promoted, and then eventually, in the old world that worked because the pace of change was so slow that that's where appraisals came from, because the person that's doing my job now that I've been promoted from, I know how to do that job inside out. So I can appraise them. I can tell them whether they're doing it right or wrong because it hasn't changed. But in today's world, it's changed. So I can't do that anymore. So I think what happens is we get promoted because we're good at, we're a subject matter expert. We're the teacher. We are the teacher in that supply chain or marketing or finance or whatever. So it's very hard then to make that shift into, now I've got to think about the whole organization. I see that a lot in consultancies where you have people who strive to become a partner in their consultancy, and they're brilliant at their particular auditing or whatever their specialism is, and then suddenly they become partner, and they've got to look at the business as a whole and try and win business for the whole business, and all they're looking for is things that they know they can do. So there is a mindset shift, and it's a bit like when you move from an individual contributor to a team leader, that's a massive shift, isn't it, in your way of working to get your results through people. It's the same at a senior level where you now need to think in a systematic way. You need to. One of the questions I often ask senior teams is just out of interest. What are our values? And you can see them trying to picture the poster on the wall. And then the second question is, why do we have them? And often that's met with silence because people haven't really stopped and thought about, well, why do we have values? And for me, that's part of shaping the culture, isn't it, really, is around, what's our principles, our guiding principles, our decision-making process that should guide our behavior. So there's lots of things there that we can start to think about. And so I think what happens is that, go back to your question in terms of what makes it so hard, is that I'm known for being the expert in X, my functional expertise, and now I've got to operate in areas I don't know anything about. And I think a lot of leaders feel like they have to have the answers for everything, whereas actually what we need to do is have the ability to be able to think in a more strategic way. We need to be able to think in a more system way. And I think today's world, leaders need to craft solutions. So, how we collaborate, how we work together. We have to teach a lot of leaders how to collaborate because they've never really learned how to do that. Collaboration is not just about software and stuff like that. It's about how you interact in meetings, when you're connecting with people, and what tools and techniques you can use to have a robust discussion and conversation. So I think that's probably the answer, is that I'm comfortable in my zone of genius. Now I'm out in an area where I don't really know anything about marketing or people or whatever. That's that's what HR do. I don't know that but we need to be thinking in that way.
Yeah, I love it, Graham. So I think you're spot on. By the way, there's lots of transitions that we make in our career, and typically what got us to where we are won't serve us well in where we're going. In fact, it might be the very thing that holds us back. If we are the expert, we are the expert in this field here. And we keep on drawing back to there, it might actually hold us back from being successful where we need to be now, and to stick up our head and look around in a system effect to understand the
Yeah.
interdependencies of that machine. I'll call it a machine for want of a better term.
Yeah.
A business
Absolutely.
is a machine, and it has to work all together.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand those connection points, you're going to limit
Yeah.
your effectiveness. Yeah.
And it's almost like moving away from machines and mechanical thinking into an organism, I guess, which is more integrated and more challenging. I think the other aspect which is interesting is when you see senior people leave organizations and they decide to become a consultant or whatever they want to do in that world where their title has been removed and they're not a CEO anymore. And it's really fascinating because quite a few of them really struggle, because if you're the CEO or any C-suite sort of title, you can walk into a room and people listen to you because you're the boss. And when you take that title away from people and put them in a different environment, they start to struggle. So I think there's lots of different skills that need to be developed as well in terms of from a leadership point of view. Is how do I connect with people? How do I influence people? How do I, because at the end of the day, I think, the only thing we're in control of as leaders is our behavior. The rest of it is about other people choosing whether they want to follow us or not. So how we use different sources of power, how we connect with people, how we build trust are really key skills that quite often, if you've lived your life in a corporate world where you've progressed in a standardized way of working where you are, positional power is important, then you don't develop those skills. So again, certainly with the younger generation coming through, they don't respect those titles anymore. They want to be led by someone who is purpose-led, connected, compassionate, will connect to who they are as individuals. And I think that's really fascinating as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift in that. And we are looking at a world where people do look for purpose-led organizations and purpose-led leaders for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I think a key thing that you're touching on there is it can be a challenge to your ego and your very identity when you make these transitions, which can make it difficult to make the shift. And then the ability to let go of things that previously worked for you but will not serve you well now. So you can let come new skills and new ways of working that might serve you better in your current role. Really interesting. I want to wind us all the way back, Graham, to I started off saying that there were 2 chapters of your intro that I wanted to unpack. Let's get into the military side of this. And I will say that I mentioned earlier that I think military style leadership is often misunderstood. From the outside, it looks very authoritarian, almost dictatorial, etc. But you said that when you shifted from the military into the outside world, you noticed things that were good about military style leadership that were missing in the corporate world. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I guess most people, when you look at the movies and things like that, you see it as the general at the top telling people what to do, and it's very command and control. And I think actually it's the opposite. I think in business it's that way around, but in the military they very quickly realised, through reflection and through the different contextual combat situations that we've been through, is you can't use command and control. You've got to use a different approach, and the essence really is around what we call mission command, which is as a senior leader, you're sharing the mission and the reason why we're doing what we're doing, and then you're empowering the team below you to really then work out how they're going to achieve that mission, and a number of factors that are important there. One is around, you can only do that when you've got people who are highly trained and highly skilled. So you can't really empower people without direction, autonomy, and support. So what was really interesting is that I think the military, they develop you to a certain standard so that seeing people know that when they empower people have the skills and knowledge and capability, and they've seen that, they know they've passed certain standards, that they can work it out on the ground. So the idea behind it is that classic, the people nearest the problem should solve it. If I'm back in the command center, I don't know really what's going on the ground, even though we've got amazing comms now and satellite and video and drones and all that sort of stuff now. Not in my day, but certainly now we have a lot more information than we used to. You can't make decisions then unless you're on the ground. And I always think about some of the sports teams we've worked with, and certainly one of the coaches we work with is international rugby coach. And he always talks about, when he was an ex-international player, but now a coach, and he's saying, look, when I'm on the sideline, I'm not the person getting bashed on the pitch. So I can't make that decision. I'm sat there on a nice tie, with a suit and tie on, sitting there watching what's going on. And certainly I can look at the big picture and the strategy sort of stuff. But I need the players. There's 15 players on the ground that need to be making decisions. They are the leaders. I can coach them, get them to the pitch, but it's down to them to operate. And I think that's the same in the military, that we did an awful lot of training, a lot of repetition, a lot of testing and trying out and improving what we do. There were lots of standards that were set that you had to be better than to pass, to be able to operate effectively. So I think in that environment where you as a senior leader, you are there sharing the mission. So I guess in the corporate world, that would be our job as senior leaders is around. I call it creating a high-performance environment where success is inevitable. And you do that by awakening possibility in people to deliver extraordinary results. That's about building people's confidence and developing them so that they do feel capable to execute. So when you do empower them, it doesn't feel like they're being dropped in the sort of scary sort of stretch zone or panic zone, that they feel they're capable of achieving success. So our job really is to share, the purpose, the vision, the value proposition, the business model, the values, the ways of working, and then get out of people's way. And it's about then getting them to sort of take ownership and working out what their contribution is, but then coming up with plans and then feeding those plans back to us, and then start to then execute. And the leadership teams they're there then to really support and enable, rather than to tell what to do.
This is awesome, Graham. I'm going to play back a little bit of what I'm hearing. I'm hearing 4 really interesting chapters there.
Okay.
The first one was around mission, right? So everyone understanding the mission. The second one was around competence. So there was before someone was delegated, which is going to be the third one, you knew that they had the competence and skills to deal with the situations that were in front of them. Once they passed that test of, yep, you're good to go, delegating the decision-making to the lowest possible level or the closest to the action is probably the better term. And then the fourth one is then the vision. Maybe there may be someone sitting up in the bleachers that can see things that others can't see from their perspective, but they're not the one that's down on the ground making the decision on the spot. And I hear this complaint a lot. We'll hear an organisation, and listen to this carefully in the audience, you're going to instantly resonate with this, where a CEO has made a decision that they think is, it's absolutely spot on. It might be a new HR policy or something like that. Yeah. And everyone turns around and goes, oh, you're so far removed. You've got no idea. You're so far from the shop floor. You've forgotten what it's like to be here. Then I want to play on your rugby metaphor because it really resonated with me.
Yeah.
The rugby coach sitting in the stand is not sitting there with a walkie-talkie going, okay, to the fly half, let's say, okay, kick the ball now, or pass. That doesn't happen. They're looking back, and they might be picking up things and going, oh, there's a weakness in the when there's a line out, the opposition right winger is coming up too far in the field. They might see things and pass some messages down. But the instant decision-making is the fly half or is the scrum half or is whoever's got the ball at the time. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to mention, when England beat Australia in the World Cup in 2003.
You don't have
to. The reason we did that, of course, is we had so many leaders on the pitch, I guess, I made a lucky drop goal. I don't know anyway. But I think you're right. I think, in terms of leadership, as senior leaders, we can see the bigger picture and the strategy stuff. And the problem is we get wrapped up in the day-to-day operational stuff. So often we miss some of the strategic stuff and maybe what the competition are doing. And I often talk to leaders and say, so how much time do you spend getting outside your business and scanning the horizon and looking at what other organizations are doing? And it's very little. They're busy doing the day-to-day sort of stuff. And so I guess what happens then is you get this sort of situation where a command is given from this senior team or whatever, but then they start meddling and they start getting involved and they start messing around. And the people on the ground, there's a phrase that says in the military is that the person who has the knowledge is in control. So if I'm in a firefight and I'm the senior person, but I can't see what the enemy's doing, then there's no point me being in control. It's the person who can see what the enemy's doing is in control, and they need to step up in that moment and get us out of trouble. So again, that's all links into high performance team working, doesn't it? And care and trust and having each other's back and all that sort of stuff. But I think, I think that sort of level of decision making in organizations is true. And you think about the typical organization is if it's command and control, the implication is that the knowledge is at the top of the business. And what they do is they create the plans and then they cascade it down. And then they require a reporting system that goes back up. And as we know, every time the plan goes down every level, it changes. And then every time the data goes up, it changes. So then what happens is the people at the top are making decisions based on the wrong data. And that's why you get this, people on the ground going, why have they made that decision? That doesn't make sense. And there's loads of examples of that, aren't there, in history?
Yeah.
Certainly in I think in military history, for example, in Vietnam, I think within the first few weeks of Vietnam, I think the US have wiped out the whole of Asia. I think in numbers wise, because everyone was adding a few more,
Yeah, right.
and they were then making decisions based on their own data. And I think the sad thing is that happens a lot. So for me, it's more around why do leaders need to check up? I mean, I have a big distaste for update meetings where leaders call meetings where everyone has to say what they've done. We should know that anyway. I shouldn't need to do that. That's a series of one-to-ones, not a team meeting. Let's get together and solve some real problems together. So I think from a leadership point of view is that if we create this clarity and give people a decision-making framework, I often say to people, look, how do you make decisions in this business? And they don't, because they have to ask the person above them to make that decision, to ask the person above them. And that, in today's world, is too slow. And the reason is they haven't got clarity around, why they exist, what we're here to do, and how should we do it. And if you have the why, the what, and the how in place, then, you can make a decision, quite easily. Is what I'm about to do aligned to our values? Is it going to help us to achieve our purpose? Is it going to take us a step further to our vision? Does it help us to achieve our KPIs and goals? Yeah, it does. Okay, I'm going to do it. I don't need to ask permission. And I think that's where we need to get to in today's world, is creating this empowerment where we have direction. We still need direction, but people have that autonomy. And I think that's where the standards and skills come in, where you can't have autonomy unless you've got the skills and the knowledge and the ability to make decisions. And then the leadership team are there to support and help and enable.
Yeah, really good. So this autonomy for sure coming with the clarity that you spoke about, so everyone understands the rules of the game, let's call it. The competence and the skills are there, and then we can have this empowerment and trust. But what we shouldn't do, that we immediately kill that trust if we empower someone and say, off you go, and then 15 minutes later we're checking in and going, how did you go? Kind of, it's there is a little bit of that, and this cascading and then sending it back up the tree, we're losing time. The story gets changed, so it's no longer accurate, and we're also losing time, and we're no longer responsive. And guess what happens then? Well, then our customers get frustrated too, because they're wanting action from your frontline team. And all of a sudden 5 weeks have gone past and the question I asked the team 5 weeks ago hasn't been answered. So it's also this responsiveness to the market as well. Yeah,
I can give a recent example of that where I was asked by a new sales director goes to business and he says, Graham said, I've got these salespeople working for me, not very good because we're not hitting their sales targets. Can you come in and train them? And I said, well, I don't really know who they are or what they do. I think, can I go out and visit them and meet them and talk to them and find out how it all works? So yeah, sure. So I went out with all the sales guys and they're really, really good. But I did notice we only went out on a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. That's really interesting. I wonder why that is. I thought maybe it was just a customer base or whatever. But what I found out was this, is that none of them left home on Monday because the new sales director said you need to write a weekly territory plan for that week to tell me where you're going. So they would spend Monday morning writing a plan, send it to him. He would then change it. And then they would then go out on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to do the plan. On Friday, they had to write a report on what they'd done that week. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. So I thought, I'm going to have to be really brave here and say it as it is. And so I had the meeting with the sales director. They said, so what do you think, Graham? He said, they're not very good, are they? I said, I think they're brilliant. I said, the problem's with you. Yeah, he really goes, well, what do you mean the problem's with me? I said, well, they're only selling 3 days a week. Why don't you enable them and get out of the way and let them sell for 5 days a week? And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, no one goes out on Monday because they're having to write this report for you. He said, yeah, but I need to know what they're doing. He said, well, why do you need to know what they're doing? Because they're really experienced people. And then why do you need to report on a Friday? Well, I need to, well, that should be automated, surely. And we had this big debate and discussion. Eventually we got to the point where, that happened. And lo and behold, they started selling more,
Start hitting their targets.
We did some team sessions with them over a period of time, and we got to a great point. But I often think, how often does that happen? How many meetings do your listeners have to attend that add no value? If you add that up over the year, one of our colleagues of ours, he wrote a book about meetings. Will there be donuts? And it's like, I can't remember exactly, but it's either 5 or 6 years of our working life that we're in meetings that add no value. And I'm thinking, why do we keep doing that? We need to sort of change the way we do things, really.
Yeah, really good. So we're getting into this concept around being overmanaged and underled. The challenging question I'm going to ask you now, Graham, is going to be people listening to this and almost having PTSD and going, I'm living through that right now. They might be the leader themselves, or they've had a leader that's done this. Where does someone start if they want to go, enough is enough. It's time to rebalance and to flip the script and be undermanaged, overled, or maybe that's not the right term either, but you know what I mean. We rebalance.
I do, yeah. So I think for me, you've got to decode it. And I think for me, to be an effective leader, the first thing is you need to understand your context. So understanding the big picture, the strategy of the organization, understanding the context you're in. If I'm, for example, Siemens is a global client of ours. So if I'm leading a digital lab in Manchester in the UK, that's different than running a manufacturing site in Melbourne, for example. So understanding the context you're in is really, really important. Second thing then really would be to be really clear about leading self around, understanding who you are as a leader, understanding what your purpose is, understanding what you think you should be doing in your context and how you operate, your working routines. And quite often when I'm coaching people, it's often down to little changes like, not having your phone next to your bed and looking at emails every morning and then driving to work and telling people off for all the mistakes. So it can be little subtle changes in your habits that can make a massive difference. And so being really clear about yourself and being able to articulate that. I always say, leadership's about connection. So if you can't explain who you are as a person and what's important to you and the non-negotiables and your drivers and values, then why would anyone want to connect with you? So being able to articulate who you are, I think, is really important. The second thing then is your success as a leader really is down to your team. So none of this works really unless you can build a high performance team. So learn how to build a team. Really be clear about it doesn't happen by chance. It is a process. There are steps that need to be in place. The team needs to know the purpose. They need to connect with each other, build trust. You need to be clear about their goals and values and principles and ways of working. And you need to set that up. And then you need to sustain high performance for your team. And then once you've got a team in place, then you can then really start to create what I call a plan on the page, which is whatever part of the business you run or business you run is, there's always a gap between where you are now and where you want to get to. If I'm a sports team, we're number 3 in the league, we want to be number 1. So what are the things we need to change to get there? So having a plan to be able to do that, I think, is really, really important. And then you've got to then be able to communicate that plan with other people within the organization. And then you've got to then be really clear about, how do we align behind it? And then how do we review and reflect and create a way of working or a cadence really that works within your business. I think when you start to make those changes, and realize that at the end of the day, it's all about people. And my success lead is not down to me; it's around the people I build around me and the people I develop. And I always talk about this. How many leaders have KPIs around confidence? And I really believe I spent a lot of time in the military making sure that the teams were confident, confident to operate in a jungle, confident to operate in a desert, confident to operate in the northern Europe or in the Arctic. And we would develop systems that would build people's confidence so that if something happened, we could drop them in at the drop of a hat and they would be confident to operate. I mean, how many leaders actually sort of drive into work in the morning or get the train into work or walk into work and think about, if I built the confidence of my team, are they really confident? Quite often it's the opposite. We end up seeing people being micromanaged and their confidence being destroyed. And it's around how you then develop your team. And I always say if you're in the corporate world, you can't be promoted unless you've got a great team around you with a successor. So you will stay where you are unless you can develop the next person who's going to take over your role, so that you can then move to your next role. So there's lots of simple things we can do. It's not rocket science. I think the first thing really is being really clear about the context, who you are as a leader. Create a way of leading in your way, which is authentic. Build your team, and once you build the team, then it's enabling the team to create a plan and then execute. And often it's around building trust, isn't it? When you trust people, they'll surprise you. I'm not talking about naive trust.
No.
The way we talk about empowerment again, you only empower people who've got the skill and knowledge and capability to deliver. Otherwise, you just feel a bit stupid, aren't you? So you got to think about it that way. But if I build my team, and then just enable them, support them, remove the blockers, and that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, really good, Graham. And I'm hearing a lot of elements around being a multiplier, essentially, that you're going to be successful through your team. And I think it's Zig Ziglar famous saying that the best way to be successful is to ensure the success of those around you. And by getting them out there and going. So there were a lot of things I picked up there, though. It did start with self when you described this, leading self, role modeling the behaviors, building the team, building the confidence of the team, enabling the team, empowering the team, trusting the team. But it's a bit of a continuum. You also had that foresight there of knowing where you are today and where you want to be and how are you going to get there. And I'm going to pick up another theme that I've noticed throughout this discussion, Graham, is that you're asking our audience, I'm going to say indirectly here, to ask themselves a lot of challenging questions. So in different parts of the story today, with the sales director that you're talking about, why do you need that report? Why do you need that plan, that weekly plan? What purpose is it serving? Have I built the confidence of my team? These are all great questions that we should be asking ourselves. And if we're paying attention and we're self-reflecting, we'll get better as a leader day by day. And when we're better as a leader, we'll create the environment where other people can do their very best work. And then the results will come. How does that sit with you?
Absolutely. That's a great summary, really. I think, as you said, when we decode it and we pause a moment and think about what am I really here to do? I'm not really here to check up on people, am I? I'm there to support and enable people. And I think once we start to make that shift, that mindset, and I think a lot of people get a little bit scared, don't they? And they sort of revert to type, don't they? And I need to know what that person's doing. Well, if I create the right environment with the right principles and ways of working, then I can manage by exception, which means I can do stuff that I should do. I had an example of project manager I was coaching where his boss said to he's been really great, but for some reason on the last couple of projects he's run, he hasn't been successful. And I said, okay, well let's go and have a chat with him. And I always when I'm coaching, it's almost like the first few conversations what I call head coaching, where it's just technical stuff, and then you get down to the heart, don't you? The real stuff. Normally it's normally mindset and skill set really that sort of gets in the way. And what I was finding is a lovely guy, really positive, bought into the business, but absolutely burnt out. And what had happened really is that he'd been running some smaller projects and they'd been really successful. And actually, he was doing the projects. He was actually doing the work. And obviously, he got rewarded with a bigger project and then a bigger project and a bigger project. He got to a point where it just wasn't possible for him to do all the work anymore. He had to have a team, but no one had really shown him how you build a project team. And obviously, project teams are different, aren't they? Because they're cross-functional and they don't report to you and all that stuff. And so the poor guy was just like inundated with work, trying to do all the stuff himself, not being able to, contact his stakeholders and do the strategy stuff and all the things he should be doing as a project manager on bigger projects. But once we'd shared that and started to show him that his job was to get results through people and his team, and his job was to get the team together and then get the team then to create the plan with him for him to enable that plan to happen. Suddenly his eyes lit up and he's been really successful since. But so I think there are situations, aren't there, where some of these things happen without you being sort of aware of them, and it's not until you stop and think and reflect and thinking, hang on, that's not right. I need to think about this in a different way.
Yeah, love it. What I love about that story is the curiosity there. Quite often we'll label someone as a poor performer. In this case, a former high performer that all of a sudden is struggling, but we'll label them and going, oh, it's just not working anymore. But have the curiosity to go, well, what's the real challenge? And to be able to find what the real challenge was, and then little tweaks and off you go, your high performers back, right? So, but to have that curiosity to work out what the real challenge is, and it could be a limiting belief, or it could be, something that's missing in that model. I want to add something that's another reflection of something you said a moment ago, Graham, that's also going to come with a little bit of self-compassion for our audience as you listen to this. I want to play on what you said about creating your own model of leadership that's authentically you. What I'm going to put to you is many of these behaviors that we're talking about are behaviors that we're mimicking the behavior of leaders before us. So because no one really, we come back to our education all the way back to the start of this interview, no one really showed us what it was to be a leader early in our career. So what was our only reference point? It was to mimic the behavior of those before us, which is a bit of a hit and miss situation.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll do two things there. One is, obviously, the world's different, and everyone would agree to me that the pace of change is so fast now. It's hard to keep up with it. So we hear about this VUCA world, don't we, and all this sort of volatility, uncertainty, all that sort of stuff. So I think if we're mimicking people from what I call the old world, that context was completely different. If I think about my dad, who I a lot of respect for, sadly not here, but lots of respect for him. He was a senior leader with Shell, so really respect what he achieved. But he led in a completely different way that's required now, and I think that's really important. So one is the context you're in. I think that's one thing. I think it was Goffey that's talked about it's about being you with skill. So I think sometimes people can use authenticity to behave badly. I would do that because of no, you're just behaving badly. You're choosing to behave badly. So I think we still need skills to be able to do that. But I think we don't spend enough time looking at our strengths and what we're really good at. But if I think I found it a lot easier in a more senior role than I did in a junior role, because I'm not a big fan of detail. I'm not a big fan of sort of standardized processes and operating processes and that. I quite like that conceptual thinking. Strategy is easy for me. I like that. I naturally think in a big picture way. And I often think about that. I was quite lucky to progress through my career and then start my own business 30 years ago. So I had that ability to be able to progress. But I often wonder how many people never made it to a senior role because they weren't a very good junior manager. But actually, they could be a really good senior manager because that's their natural style. So I think that I'm 63 this year, so I'm still learning stuff about myself. So I think that journey of self-discovery and self-awareness and playing to your strengths and really, really understanding what you're naturally gifted at and what's your zone of genius. And I think if we do that, then we're going to be successful. And it's really interesting when I look at some of the sports coaches that I talk to and teams we work with, and they talk about many years ago, what they used to do is they used to look at the best players in the world and they would create a model about how they kicked a ball, for example, or how they did it. then they would teach that to children. They don't do that anymore. What they do to it, their kid, they say, well, kick a ball. So they kick a ball and then they coach the child to kick a ball in the best way for them. And I think that's a great analogy, really, for what I think leadership should look like in today's world. Is that the more we are ourselves, the easier it becomes. I think a lot of people become overwhelmed and stressed because they're trying to be someone they're not. We see a lot of that with sadly in today's environment where women haven't got a level playing field from a leadership point of view. That's clear in place, and a lot of women are trying to be someone they're not, and rather than being who they really are and bringing a real self to work. And when they do that, they're really successful. So I think, and that's not just women, but men as well. I think the more we can do that, and the more we can create environments where people feel comfortable bringing their real self to work, I think it's getting better. I think a lot of organisations are becoming a lot more intelligent, aren't they, around valuing difference, celebrating difference, bringing diversity to play, making sure that people feel comfortable being who they are. But as long as they're doing that with skill and it's not destroying sort of situations. So I think that's the secret, isn't it? Of I think many success, whether it's elite sport or whether it's leadership or any business aspect, is the more you are yourself. My grandfather, he ran the dock in Liverpool in the UK, and back in the day, it was like gang warfare. Really, to be fair, it was a pretty tough environment. And when he retired, he retired running the largest tobacco warehouse in the world, which is Stanley Dock, which is now the Titanic Hotel in Liverpool. And when he retired, I said to him, what's the most important thing you learned about leadership? And he said that for him, leadership was all about being real.
Yeah, being real.
He said the more real you are, the more people will connect at you at the right level.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be someone you're not, then people feel that. They sort of see that as, I don't know, danger or whatever it is, or something in our psyche that says, "Oh, not really sure about that person." Yeah. Whereas the more real you are, I think the word vulnerability hadn't been invented in my granddad's era, but admitting mistakes maybe. I think they used to call it interpersonal skills back then, didn't they, and all that sort of stuff. But those sort of human connections, because he had to lead, although he was the leader of the dogs. He had to get things done in a very interesting way, and it often wasn't the most senior person that he needed to go talk to. It was the person who had the most influence, let's say, within the gangs that he had to sort of work with. So that real and that connection. At the end of the day, leadership's all about connection and conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. Spot on. And I like this word real. And I think we are getting better at allowing people to show up as their authentic self. But this word real is really powerful because when we're real, we're relatable. And when we're relatable, we can build the connection that you're talking about, Graham. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spot on. I've absolutely loved this conversation. It's been a gem. I could talk to you for hours, Graham, but I think we better let our audience get back to work. So I'd like to now bring us to our rapid round. So these are the same 4 questions we ask all of our guests. What's the one thing you know now, Graham Wilson, that you wish you knew when you were 20?
Do what you love. Yeah, do what you love. Yeah. So I think when I started Success Factory, I was sat on the beach actually in the UK, actually in Anglesey in North Wales, with a piece of paper. In the middle of the piece of paper, I wrote, "Living a Wonderful Life." And then this sort of like mind map started to come out of what the things that at that time for me were living a wonderful life, what that meant and what I should be doing. And it was like created this vision of how I wanted to lead my life. And then I said to myself, okay, well, in order to achieve that, what must I do? And that's really where Success Factory came from, was that clarity. So I think, if you're doing what you love and it's an ikigai, I think the phrase, isn't it, where, you can get paid for doing the stuff you love, but also the stuff that is a skill set for you, which is natural. I think once you've got that, it just flows, and be clear about your purpose. And my purpose is about awakening possibility in people to deliver extraordinary results. So if I've had a tough day, I can get to the end of the day. So, well, have I got someone to think? Have I asked the right question? Have I got them to sort of challenge what they do? Then, if I have, it's a great day, and that's it. So simplicity, do what you love, be clear about your purpose, and create the life that you want.
Love it.
Don't fall into that trap of creating something that someone else wants.
Yeah, really cool. The intersection between what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and then solving a problem that the world needs solved, or at least one other human being needs that service. And then off
Perfect.
you go. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
What's your favorite book?
Favorite book, apart from my own. am I allowed to say that?
You go ahead. I'll give you the license. Go for it. Yeah.
Well, actually, there is a book which is my favorite book, and it's close to my heart. Actually, it's actually one that I wrote with my daughter. So my youngest daughter, Jenny, has cerebral palsy, so she's in a wheelchair. But yeah, she had a great life, and she was told she wouldn't be successful at school. She was really successful, got all her exams. She went into sport. She played wheelchair basketball. She's married. She got a child. So really successful in that viewpoint, and has overcome lots of challenges in her life. So we wrote a book around resiliency, and in that book, it's actually called Wamazugi because we couldn't call it the Book of Resilience because Jenny wouldn't let me do that. She said, Dad, that's boring. So what we're going to do? So at the time, we were doing a lot of stuff with Japanese companies around the kintsugi concept around you can be broken, but you can be rebuilt to be something more beautiful. And wabi-sabi, which is around the world of acceptance and accepting who you are and things like that. So we created this word wabi-zugi, and we then created a model of resilience. So I know it's something that I wrote with Jenny, but it tells her story, a very personal story about her life and her challenges at school and being excluded and all those sort of things, but how she overcame that and has achieved success, and not without its ups and downs, but a great story there. And then we share lots of tools and techniques, but like Leadership Laid Bare, we share lots of techniques and tools for becoming more resilient. So I guess from a personal point of view, my favorite book. But if I look at a book that I read recently, I quite like what I call airport books, and airport books are ones where you can take off the shelf and read it in 30 minutes before your flight, sort of type books. And I read one the other day, quite a while ago now. It's called The Gift, and it's by Spencer Johnson, I think, who wrote Who Moves My Cheese and all that sort of stuff. American, great author. And on the front of it has a box with a ribbon on it, and it says like the present, the secret of life, or whatever I think it was, something like that. Anyway. And I thought, that's pretty cool. That. So I read it, and I got to the end of it. I thought, I didn't really get that. What's the gift about? I didn't really get it at all. So I had to buy it. So I bought it, and I read it again on the plane. And I think I was going to Amsterdam or something like that. So about an hour and a half, something like that, 2 hours on the flight. And really, what it was saying was this concept of there's nothing really you can do about the past apart from learn from it. There's nothing really about the future you can do because it hasn't happened yet. But the secret to life is about being present. And that's for me, is what life's all about. It's about being in a moment. And it really resonated. So that's probably my most simplest book, but a real check around the fact that how often aren't we present, where we think about next, when it's all about connection, creating memories, isn't it? And actually being in the moment.
Yeah.
If we're doing this session out, being in the moment and being in tune with each other is what it's all about, isn't it? It doesn't matter what's happening in the world. It's about being in the moment. So that's one of my favorite books.
Really powerful, Graham. I love it. What's your favorite quote?
Quote. Oh, yeah, we were talking about that before. What's my favorite? It's hundreds of quotes. But I'm gonna say one that I don't know whether I created it, but "Speeding up by slowing down" is my one of my quotes.
Yeah,
and
really
it sort of resonates with a lot of people when we do our training programs. Quite often people go, you know what, that one sentence you said about the story about your dad and your uncle, and when they lost the race, they're going too fast, and I've been going too fast, and I've just realised that I need to know when to slow down, but also need to know when to speed up. So, speeding up by slowing down is probably my favourite quote.
Yeah, really powerful and very much in line with our conversation today. Finally, there's going to be people listening to this, Graham, who are enthralled by what you're saying. They may be caught in that very trap that we speak about over-managed, under-led. How do people find you if they'd like to know more about you, your books, your programs?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is onto the website. So there's a couple of our training website, which is thesuccessfactory.co.uk. So on there will be all our corporate stuff. But there's a personal website, which is grahamwilson.com. And on there's a store, and you're welcome to download lots of resources, free resources. There are some questionnaires that we've developed through Score App that people look at their leadership style, resilience, meetings, teams. There's tons of stuff on there you can have a look at. But yeah, that's probably the best places to have a look at. And obviously, if they want to drop me an email, it's graham.wilson@thesuccessfactory.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Graham. I've absolutely adored this conversation. There's been so many gifts in this for our leaders to go away and think about, things that they can immediately reflect on and immediately try in the way that their whole mindset about the way that they approach their leadership. Thank you so much for the gift of your time with your presence here with us now and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
It's my pleasure. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
You've been listening to The Leadership Project. In the next episode, I'm joined by Molly McGrath, the author of the book Fix My Boss, where she tackles the disconnect between leaders and employees head on. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you weekly live stream shows, video podcasts, and curated videos all about leadership so you can become the leader that you wish you always had. Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mixbeers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.